have a pretty loud keyboard. I hope it's not too distracting to everybody who is listening. Going to be has a pretty loud keyboard. Okay, so it looks like we're live. Let me go to the live stream and just turn the volume down so I can follow the questions on YouTube as well.
We are live.
Yes, got it. All right, so okay, so welcome everybody to our very first live session. And think of this as the week 0 live session, if you like, because we're doing this right before the course has started. The course officially begins on Monday, day after tomorrow, and you should have your week 1 assignments by then, and you already have access to all the material. I think some of you may have filled in a Google form, which we had circulated, saying that you could share your questions with us. So what I'm going to do is maybe just see if I can pull that up as well. But in the meantime, I think to everybody who has joined us in Zoom and on YouTube, welcome. And I think there are a few questions already on Zoom, so I'll try to take those first. And then if, for those of you who are joining the live stream over YouTube, I'm trying to follow along. So if you have any questions, then please feel free to post them there. So to everybody who's watching on YouTube, hello, right back at you. Good evening, and thanks for joining. Okay, so I think one of the questions in the chat here, I'm not taking them in a particular order, except what I think seems relevant. So yeah, the first one is, what about prerequisites? So somebody has asked if we could discuss all the prerequisites of this course and how can we learn the prerequisites fast. So let me try to address that first. So so you might have seen a link to the course website. So let me share my screen here and walk you through what the course website looks like. So many of you are probably just looking at the course from the NPTEL interface. You're probably logged in through Swayam, and that's perfectly fine as well. I'm not logging in through Swayam because what I see will be a little bit different from what you see, because I have an instructor account. Maybe I can try to create a student account and try to log in through that in a while. But since the question was about prerequisites, let me just try to tell you where you can find more information about the prerequisites. There is, I think, all the reference material for the course is on the course portal on Swayam. But if you want more, so there's, so if you go here to references, you will find a bunch of pointers to books, to other related NPTEL courses, to YouTube channels. So I think on Zoom, somebody said in the chat, maybe you can follow some famous YouTubers. It is true that, there are a lot of YouTube channels that do a great job of talking about competitive programming. There is, CodeChef's official channel, which I think is now called Learn Competitive Programming with CodeChef, does a great job. They have video editorials for their contest come up very often. And I think Eric To's channel is great. And there are regular live streams there. And he also runs a Discord, which is extremely active, which, so if you're really, kind of interested, you can join the Discord, you can subscribe to these YouTube channels, and you'll get the only thing to be a little aware of is that you'll probably end up being bombarded with content, and it can get a bit overwhelming, especially if you're just starting out. So if you're looking to cover prerequisites more than just, solving problems in CP, then I would say you could check out the other NPTEL courses. So I think the closest one will be the one by Professor Madhavan here, which is, I think, data structures and algorithms with Python. And for those of you who are more comfortable with the Java, I think there was a question about Java as well, and I'll come to that in a minute. But there's a slightly older course, but I think the material is just equally relevant, and that is by Professor Naveen Garg. And if I remember correctly, all the code that was written in that course was Java based. So So I think for all the material that we cover in the course, we will have at least the questions that we do in the videos. We have official solutions in C++ and Python and Java. We have them in in all the three languages. So for sure. And then occasionally we also have them. I think some of the learners from the previous edition of the course. So everything is in a GitHub repository. So many of the learners in the previous edition contributed code in other languages. So I think if you go to the GitHub repository of solutions. Let's just look at what's going on for week 1. So you can see that, okay, in fact, here, oddly, I don't. So there is C, C++, and Python for sure. But I'm not sure, maybe I'm pretty sure that we did have, yeah, as you can see here, we have Java solutions in week 3. And we have them in week 2. I think most of the time we have Java solutions, maybe with the exception of week 1. So in any case, I think, yeah, so basically, I think you will be able to follow along irrespective of the programming language. So there are two kinds of prerequisites. One prerequisite is the data structures and algorithms concept prerequisites, and the other is, of course, some sort of a familiarity with the programming language kind of prerequisite. And I think it's a good idea to have a little bit of comfort on both fronts before you jump into the course, because I think we have observed feedback from last time from, I think, some people who found the course to be very overwhelming. And I think one of the reasons for that was if you haven't done your algorithms and data structures courses, or you haven't done a programming languages course, you will find this to be a little bit difficult, I think, or at least you'll find it more difficult than we intended to be for you, right? So when we designed this course, we had a certain a certain level of challenge in mind. And I think if you come into this without, for example, being familiar with the programming language, then you will find it much more challenging, because you're also trying to learn a programming language at the same time that you're trying to learn many other things as well. So it'll become very hectic. And this becomes like the load of 2 courses instead of 1, if that's what you're doing. So just in case you haven't done a basic algorithms course or basic programming course, I would definitely encourage you to maybe pause your plans for this course and take care of those first. You can probably do them simultaneously. It's not impossible, but it will be it will be a little bit hectic, and it will require a greater commitment of your time. So you have to be kind of prepared for that. So, so overall prerequisites, I think there is, if you go to, sort of week 0 here, prerequisites, there's a description here of like the major ideas that are involved. And if you've done your programming course, if you've done your data structures algorithms course, I think most of these prerequisites should be easily covered. Apart from these overall prerequisites, there's also like in every week, so let's go to BFS and DFS, for instance. So every week has a prerequisite section, and it tells you what you need to know beforehand. And in many cases, like for instance, with disjoint set union, for instance, I mean, although it's generally nice to know disjoint set union in advance, you'll see that we have a set of foundations lectures where we actually cover all the concepts. We typically don't do proofs. Okay, so if you want to know why these algorithms work, or why the complexity is such and such, you will have to go to a more standard algorithms course to discover those things. But we do cover the concepts, and we cover what you need to be able to implement the algorithms, okay? But obviously, if you've seen these things before, it'll be a much smoother experience for you to learn things, okay? So as I said, basically 2 kinds of prerequisites. One is about a programming language, and the other is the concepts. And you can find topic-wise prerequisites on the individual pages, and you can find overall prerequisites, just in week 0. And if you're looking for references, they're here. And I think somebody said that it's a long list of books. That is true. And it's a long list because different people like different styles. So I'm just telling you that here are all the books that are out there, and hopefully you find something you like. It doesn't mean that you have to read all of them. It just means that you need to find something that resonates with you. And so you can flip through a few of them and see what you like and kind of take it from there. Okay. All right, so that when I talked about programming languages, it reminds me that I think somebody was saying that we want a clarification about whether Java is okay. So I think for CP at large, Java is perfectly fine. A lot of people use Java, and I think it's got a very good set of libraries, for instance, and so different programming languages have different sort of pros and cons, and different things that are convenient in one, inconvenient in the other, and so on. So it is true that if you look at it statistically, then I think C++ is probably the overwhelmingly popular choice among the CP crowd. But I don't think using Java is limiting in any way. In fact, up to a certain point, even using Python is not limiting. I think there's a lot of myth about Python being slow, etc. But I think you will find that unless you're in a very, very advanced stage of doing CP, the slowness of Python is really not a limiting factor. And many platforms even give you extra time if you're running Python code. So for the purposes of this course, even Python is okay. Java is perfectly fine. But I think one crucial thing is, what about the NPTEL assignments? Can you compile these assignments in Java? So on that, I think so far, I was just checking, I think so far we have the assignments in C, C++, and Python. I will try and see if Java can also be incorporated. So we'll try to ensure that at least from week 2, you can also submit your solutions in Java. Basically, what we need is somebody who can translate the sample solutions into Java. So if we can find some support for that, then I think we can also offer this, offer that you can submit your solutions in Java. So I'll have an update for you on that front soon. Okay, let me just check if there's any questions here. Okay, Hindi में समझाइए. So all in one हम कोशिश करेंगे. I think बीच में मैं हिंदी में बातें कर लेती हूँ, but फिर I think ये हो जाता है कि लोगों को अंग्रेजी फिर मिस करने लगते हैं. तो मैं कोशिश करती हूँ कि मतलब अगर कुछ स्पेसिफिक हो जो आपको हिंदी में समझना हो. अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो लेक्चर्स वगैरह है वो सारे इंग्लिश में हैं. तो दैट इज समथिंग दैट यू माइट हैव टू कीप इन माइंड. बाकी मैं कोशिश करूँगी बीच में मैं हिंदी में बोलूँ थोड़ा बहुत. ठीक है. अभी जो है let's go back to Zoom, and what do you prefer, Vim or VS Code? So now I'll try to go through the questions. I thought I'll answer the ones that seemed most important, and now I'll just try to go through it in the order in which they appeared in the Zoom chat. Let me know if I missed anything. What do you prefer for CP, Vim or VS Code? So this is about the editors or the IDEs that you want to use. So yeah, when you actually go to submit your code on platforms like Codeforces and CodeChef and so on, they even give you an online sort of some people would kind of submit a file in which so you can choose a file from your file system and you can submit your code. So you can write your code in your favorite IDE environment, in your favorite code editor, but they also give you like this little dibba here where you can write your own code, and if it's a simple program, maybe you can even type it out quickly here. There are of course online IDEs. For instance, Replit is pretty popular, so you can even use an IDE in your browser if if for some reason you are on a new laptop where things are not installed or whatever, you don't have to. You could even use a website like Replit, and I think gives you a pretty decent environment to write your code in. I would not worry too much about what IDE you use. I think the ones that you see in the screencasts, in fact, in the early lectures, you will see me typing in VS Code. But in the later lectures, what I started doing was I started taking screenshots of my code using a VS Code extension called Polar Code, in case anyone's interested. It gives you these nice screenshots, which are easy for you to insert in slides and so on. So I have static screenshots of the code, so you cannot even see what editor I'm using, but they were all written with VS Code. So VS Code, Sublime, Atom, and a few others are all very similar, I think, in the way that they look and feel, the UI experience is like generally speaking very similar. There are small differences in terms of some of them are better at handling really large files. Some of them have more support for different languages. Although all of them are popular and they have a very stable community and they have a great library of extensions. So you can, like the bare bones editor is already pretty good in all of them, and you can extend it with themes and customizations and extra power features like linting or or whatever you need. You can typically install extensions that will take care of it for you. And that's true of all of these platforms. So that's one set of editors. These are these ultra modern editors. They're typically written in, I'm not sure, JavaScript or something like that. And, it's kind of fun to use them. And as I said, that they're super popular. You'll find a lot of support for them. If you're stuck with something related to an editor feature, you'll probably find help very easily. On the other hand, there's also like the old school editors like VI, Vim, Emacs, and so on and so forth. And if you already know how to use them, there is absolutely no harm in just continuing to use them. They're extremely powerful and flexible. And if you know what you're doing, it's great. But if you're just starting out and you haven't even heard of these, I would say don't bother. It's completely fine to just use something simple to begin with. And of course, VS Code is, I should not try to imply that VS Code is necessarily simple, but it can be simple when you're starting out, and you can keep adding and installing more features as you go along. You can learn more keyboard shortcuts that makes you more efficient in the editor and things like that. Okay, so hopefully that addresses the question about the editor. By the way, in week 0, I think there is a video with a section about frequently asked questions. I think some of this is covered there as well. So, so you could watch that if you like. All right, so there's some discussion about editors and why VS Code as opposed to Vim. I think I tried to address some of that. So I think we talked about Java. If we don't know C++, can we learn from one short video and continue in the course? Technically, I think it's possible. It'll just like not be very pleasant to do it that way, I think. But if you're willing to put in some extra time, it might be possible. Is DP a prerequisite or will we learn it? As with most topics in this course, I think those who have seen it before will have an advantage because they'll be able to do it quicker. But we cover the concept of DP from scratch, actually. So I think it's okay if you don't know it already, so it's fine. Please discuss all the prerequisites. I think we did that for like the first 15 minutes or so. So yeah, okay. All right, I'm having problems with writing recursive functions and I couldn't find a satisfactory answer online to improve. Recursive functions are like counterintuitive to think about if you are seeing them for the first time or if you have only seen them recently. It does take some getting used to. Writing them is usually, I think the process of writing a recursive function is probably not so hard, but I think it's just trying to imagine what's actually going on that can sometimes be really confusing. So if once you start going through the lecture material, hopefully you'll find that, it's kind of, hopefully the explanations will help you. The other thing that you can do is like this website called Python Tutor, I think. Let's see, yeah. So what Python Tutor does is it takes a piece of code that you have written and it helps you actually visualize what the code is doing. So, you could probably like write a simple recursive program. Let's say we write something like define factorial, say n=1. Return y, always need a base case, as return n times factorial of n-1. I hope that's correct. And then maybe we say something like factorial of 4 or something. Don't want to be very adventurous. Maybe we say print factorial of 4. Okay. And then you say visualize execution. And so you'll see that this code is going to run for 18 steps. And so you can, you can drag the slider or you can say next, next, next. So you can see what's happening. You can see that the factorial function is called with n=4, then it's called with n=3, then 2, and then 1. And at this point, it returns 1 because that if block gets triggered. So it returns 1, then it goes back, and 2 gets multiplied by 1, and then 3 gets multiplied by 2, and so on and so forth. And finally, you get what you printed in the console here. So I find Python Tutor to be incredibly useful in visualizing code. It also helps you catch bugs. Sometimes when you have code that's not giving you the expected output on a test, right, you're convinced that the code is okay. Sometimes it just helps to, take the part of the code that is relevant and put it in Python Tutor and carefully visualize the execution. This is something that ideally you should also be able to do just with pen and paper, but that can be tedious and error prone. So, Python Tutor really lets you do this nicely. And I think they also have like a Java tutor, C tutor, and C++ tutor. So it's not limited to Python. You can do something similar, even if you're using C++, Java, or C. Okay, so hopefully that helps. And as I said, for something like recursion, once you start looking at the material and if there's some specific place that you're stuck, hopefully, just let us know on Discord, and we'll take it from there. We'll try to address any specific questions that you have about recursion. There's a suggestion, I think, from Yash, who says HackerRank is a go-to place for some nice practice, and you can try solving. I guess you can try looking at materials from YouTubers, which I kind of agree. The only thing about YouTube is that it can get very overwhelming. HackerRank is nice. You can create an account. It's free, and they have a lot of step-by-step, sort of guided learning paths for various topics. And it also helps you learn a language if you want to do that. So I think they have like a Python learning path and things like that. I haven't checked it out in a while, but I remember thinking that it's nicely done, and it's fairly useful, I think, to begin with. And I think Geeks for Geeks is another popular website which has a lot of pretty reliable training material. VS Code for simplicity and syntax highlighting, I agree. Is it necessary to do a course in design and analysis of algorithms? Ideally, yes. I think we covered that a little bit as to why. I think you can push it without that background, but it'll be a lot more work, like at least double the work. Yeah, the books are too many. Abhinav, I think just don't worry about it too much. Just pick something that you like. And if you don't have the time to evaluate all options, you could start with the first one. I think by Erickson, it's freely available and it's wonderfully written. So yeah, I think you could start with that. Atul, if you miss any class, so the classes are really these pre-recorded lectures, so you don't have to worry about missing them. We're doing these live sessions as sort of an optional extra thing, so that I can get to see you all, and hopefully it's useful for you as well. So if you miss these, you will get a recording, so there will be a YouTube playlist where we'll keep adding all these, so you can check them out later as well. But really the main advantage is in being able to go back and forth like we're doing now. Okay, how and where can I learn the Python sufficient for this course, as I'm comfortable with C or C++. So if you're already comfortable with C or C++, you really don't need to do Python. In the lectures, I use both Python and C++ for different problems. And usually, if you know C++, I think you'll be able to understand. Somebody was saying I should talk in Hindi. So Hindi mein there's this phrase ki bhavna samajh jana, hai na? So I guess if you know C++ and somebody shows you an implementation of an algorithm in Python, I think you'll still be able to understand the gist of what is happening. So it's not really necessary to learn Python. But if you do want to learn Python specifically for some reason, there are lots of excellent resources. I think Learning Python the Hard Way is probably a popular book. And I guess there are websites like Code Academy, which handhold you through exercises. And you can just do interactive exercises and get used to the syntax and so on. So anybody has any suggestions, please keep them coming in the chat. I think a lot of you are posting your suggestions, which is awesome. Yeah, okay. Will it be useful for everyone if students join a Telegram group and making a group and so on? So yeah, feel free to make smaller groups, study groups, if you think that will help. But in the meantime, you can just, I think, also keep interacting on Discord, which is where hopefully all of us will be around and active for the next 12 weeks. All right, so, okay, this is Okay, somebody's like, we should discuss more important things than code editors. Okay, all right. Should we participate in CP contests throughout the course? Highly recommended. I think it helps a lot to keep participating. And please do that. I think fortunately there are lots of contests happening on various platforms, so definitely recommended. Shall you add some graphical representation of algorithms of your code in all videos so that makes it easier to understand what's going on? So I don't typically take my code and run it through this graphical thing. I mean, sometimes it may have done that, but typically I'll take the algorithm when I'm explaining the algorithm, and usually an explanation of the algorithm is, you'll find that it is usually very visual in the lectures. So, okay, so the next question is, do I cover about time limit exceeded errors and how to overcome that? I think a lot of the TLE kind of errors are because of inefficient algorithms. I mean, sometimes it's because of an inefficient implementation, like the algorithm is what was expected, but somehow there was something exotic about the way you implemented it, because of which you're getting that error. That does happen sometimes. So that is not covered so much, except for, you learn it by experience. And we have discussed specific situations in the live sessions when we were talking about how to implement solutions to certain, to certain questions. But if it's about coming up with an efficient implementation, that's pretty much what the whole course is about. So yes, it does get discussed indirectly in that sense. We always try to present an algorithm that's very natural and probably easy to come up with in the beginning. And then we observe that it would fail, because it's too slow for the tests. We'll look at the boundaries of the tests, the limits, and we'll say, okay, this algorithm is not going to work with these constraints. And then we try to improve it. So that's kind of a running theme in the entire course for all the problems that we discuss. Okay, so there's this sync with standard input output. Yeah, I frankly don't really know what's going on the internals there. I mean, there is some funda, but I think I'll not be able to explain it well off the top of my head. Given the specific nature of your question, I would suggest please repost this on Discord, and if somebody knows more than I do, they will, I'm sure, respond. Otherwise, I will get back to you after, looking it up a little more carefully. So I hope that helps. What is the difficulty level of the questions that will be solved during the course? That's a very hard question to answer, because it's going to be different for different people depending on the experience that you already have. We try to keep it so that every assignment is a mix of questions that are straightforward, in the sense that if you have seen the lectures, then these questions should be immediately answerable because they're fairly direct. And then we have some questions which will not be directly related to the lectures, but they have solutions using the techniques that were covered in the lecture. So, so there are questions like that. And that, I think, it should not be too hard, but maybe it'll take some of your time to really think through things. So they will not be immediately obvious, hopefully. And then there are probably usually one or two questions, and some of them may be given as practice questions where the intention is to really maybe be a little bit challenging, be a little bit interesting. But yeah, so we've had varying feedback about the level of the course. There are people who have said that they found it difficult. And I think some of that is because of not having done an algorithms course before. That is my understanding. Yeah. So it really varies depending on the experience that you have when you come into the course. But we try to keep it. We try to have a healthy mix of difficulty levels in the questions. Okay, so I think somebody has suggested an explanation of how sync with standard input output works. So yeah, I suppose it reroutes cin and cout to printf and scanf, which is supposed to be faster. And I think that's probably, yeah, I mean, I don't know the details of the mechanics of why why it's faster exactly, but yeah, okay. I know Java, but most of the people suggest to learn Python because it's said to be the future of coding. Can you please say which is good, returning to Java or starting this course with Python? If you plan to learn Python anyway, and you want to use this course as an excuse to get some practice with Python, I think that's fine. That's a good way to learn a programming language, I guess. But you don't really need, I mean, so if you have a specific need to learn Python, like let's say maybe you're doing a course on some topic which has assignments in Python, then you'll have to learn it anyway. And it's something that you can learn on a need-to basis. It's certainly not a prerequisite for this course. And if you already know Java, we're going to try our best to ensure that the assignments can also be submitted in Java. So we'll try to make that happen because there seems to be at least some demand for it. I think a few of you have said that you would like to submit your assignments in Java, so we'll try to make that happen. Matlab and CP, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think as far as I know, I don't know if Matlab is a permitted language when you submit. So let's see. Just go back to the page where I get to submit my code. So these are the supported languages on Codeforces, for instance. Yeah, I mean, it's unlikely that Matlab will be supported because I think it's a proprietary language and not freely available as far as I'm aware. There is an open source version called Octave, but I don't even see Octave. So although I think technically you can probably solve these questions in Matlab, I don't think you can submit your solutions in Matlab. Okay. All right. What will be the difficulty of the course? I think I tried to address that a while ago. So hopefully that answers your question. Is it important to study C++ even if I know Python? For the purposes of this course, no. And I think if you're comfortable with Python, you can, so certainly people who are comfortable with both C++ and Python may have a certain advantage because for a given question, you can just pick the best tool for the job. So Python is particularly good with handling large numbers, for instance, like it's just simpler code when you have large numbers involved. Similarly, I think that there are other things where the C++ libraries are really effective. And so I think, I mean, if you knew both, that would probably give you a very slight advantage. But you can certainly get through this whole course knowing only Python. That's perfectly fine. But usually, as I said, C++ is really popular in CP, and I think it's useful. It's useful to learn in general, not necessarily for this course, but if you want to level up your CP practice, at some point, most people make that transition. You don't have to worry about doing it right away, though. Yeah. Okay, IOI aspirants tips. Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap in the IOI syllabus and the syllabus of this course. In fact, I think all the topics that we cover are in the IOI syllabus. So hopefully the materials in this course will be helpful for your IOI preparation. But I think there are a few topics in IOI syllabus which are actually not covered in this course. So you'll have to go kind of a little bit beyond. In terms of tips, I guess just, going back and forth between practicing a lot of problems and learning new concepts is helpful. And most people just try to solve problems and upsolve them if they can't solve them during a contest and use that as a means to learn new techniques. So keep practicing and keep learning. I think that's the main tip, I guess. Okay. So which programming is best for competitive programming? I assume you mean which programming language. Again, I would say that C++ is fairly popular. So if you have the luxury of learning whatever is, whatever it takes, I think maybe C++ would be a good place to start. But I'd say C++, Java, Python are all fairly popular choices and they all have their merits. So any of those should be fine. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a point that Yash is making, which I agree. If you pick an unpopular language, you'll have a difficult time trying to debug where your implementation went wrong. So as you can see, Codeforces does support a whole lot of languages, including things like Haskell and Scala and so on. So technically, sure, you can code in these languages, but you'll have fewer friends probably to talk to if you have to discuss implementation-based issues, bugs coming from implementations. How can you improve your logical thinking apart from problem solving? So I'm not sure if you're asking, like, other than solving more problems, what are ways of improving logical thinking? I actually don't know. I think the main way of improving, how you think and approach problems is really practice. I think just doing more and more problems helps you develop certain patterns, and more passively, you can probably listen to other people talking about solving problems or how they solve problems, or you can read up on more concepts. So yeah, basically it is reading up, but also doing the problem solving yourself that builds confidence and builds your skills. So I would say practice is really the main way of going about this. Of course, you need to make sure that you have like overall a healthy lifestyle so that you can I think especially if you're competing and if you're sleepy, for example, because you didn't sleep properly because you were stressed or something, then I think all that training will probably not be as effective as it could have been if you have a fresh mind. So they're like small practical things like that. But other than that, I think it's mainly reading and practicing, or reading, or however you enjoy learning. It could be from YouTube videos, it could be from anything that's convenient for you. But learn and do. I think just do enough of both, I guess. Yeah. What is the process of planning the algorithm? Should I try writing pseudocode on paper first? I think if you're starting out, that may be useful, but typically what people do on pen and paper more than actual pseudocode is just trying to work through a few examples, trying to get the main ideas and the main flow of what you want. And sometimes when you're debugging like off by one errors and things like that, you'll probably work out like small examples on pen and paper. If time is not a constraint, if you're not in a contest and you're doing it aram se, I think you can probably write pseudocode if you think that helps you organize your thoughts. So this is, I think, different for different people. So I guess different people will have different approaches or styles. So yeah, I mean, it's totally up to you if you want to do pseudocode on paper first. But I think with practice, you get to a point where you can just code straight away. But it's still very, very useful to do pen and paper planning to verify that your approach is actually correct and is fast enough. So that those are things that you want to do before you start writing code. There are lots of specific, okay, so the next question is any specific resource to learn standard library in C++. So this is, I think, STL. We have a primer on the course website, which I think is not yet fully complete. Sorry, it's right here on the references page. So as you can see, it says work in progress. We try to cover the things that would be, okay, I have no idea why it says that this, okay, maybe I need to update that link a little bit, but yeah, this is something that I'll ensure is fixed. But there's also, I think, like a problem solving with algorithms and data structures using C++. And I think that will also have a bunch of pointers. If you look at the GitHub repository, you will find, again, as we go along, we make use of whatever is relevant from the STL. So you'll just kind of learn on the go as well. And I think even just, I mean, there are a couple of standard references, including, I think even the manual and websites like Geeks for Geeks, which is what will show up if you start searching for, C++ STL references or resources on the internet. And I think those are pretty good places to get started. I think the STL manual is actually pretty well written. And it's, so if you're wondering how a particular function works, I think that's actually a good place to check exactly what's going on. So hopefully that helps. Will the assignments be only programming type or many MCQs on theory too? So if you look at the week 0 assignments, you'll see that there were a few programming assignments and there were like MCQs. So we'll continue to follow that pattern. There will be MCQs as well, but there will not be MCQs on theory because this is not about learning the algorithms necessarily. I mean, there may be a few questions of that kind, but that won't be the majority of what the MCQ questions are about. So the MCQs will also explore more of solving CP type problems, but through MCQs. Okay. Okay, how much time needs to be invested per week if you want to be intermediate stage at the end of the course? Again, this is hard to answer because it's, again, one of those things that's very different for different people. Let me just quickly double check the YouTube stream. Okay, yes. All right, I'll take an easy one from here. The course duration is 12 weeks starting from next week. And then the exam happens, like there's a break for 1 week or so, and then we have the exam. Will the course certificate help us with jobs, and will it be helpful in the long run in terms of internships? Generally speaking, yes. I think it helps you develop the skills that you need to be able to, let's say, do well in interview situations. But I would say that CP is, okay, CP is something that's increasingly used by companies to filter out applicants. So I think it's useful, but often what you need to do well in an interview is, not even as intense as, as what you typically need to prepare for, say, ICPC or IOI or INOI or any of these things. So I think CP may be a little bit of over preparation in some cases. So just in case you find that, CP is not, it's not your cup of tea, you don't, you're finding it to be too stressful, then I think you may want to set it aside and just focus on interview preparation, because you can definitely do interview preparation without doing CP. It's perfectly fine. At the same time, I think doing CP, if you happen to enjoy it, I think it just makes you a better problem solver. It helps you become somebody who is good at thinking on their feet. And these are all skills that are helpful in interview situations. So it doesn't hurt, but I think it's not like it's not necessary. And probably depending on the kind of job that you're applying for, it is also not sufficient, in the sense that if you're applying for a job which has it has a specific set of requirements, you will usually need to do more specific preparation. But so I will say it's useful, but it's I mean, there are more specialized sources for interview preparation, right? So there's a book called Cracking the Coding Interview, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. So you probably want to pick up something like that if that's your immediate and main aim. Okay, so let me go back to the questions coming in on Zoom. Okay, how much time, I think I was just beginning to address this. How much time do we need to invest per week if you want to be at an intermediate stage? Again, it's something that really depends on where you're already coming from. But I guess if you have the prerequisites that we expect, which is you're already reasonably fluent in some programming language, C++, Java, or Python, and you have seen data structures and algorithms, like you've done your basic algorithms, data structures courses, then I expect that between 3 to 7 hours. I think the lectures are themselves about 2.5 hours, and it may take you a little bit more time than that. I know people watch lectures 2 times the speed these days and all of that, but you might still find that you need to pause to assimilate and kind of understand what's going on. I also encourage you to pause a lot before I start explaining the solution, so that you can come up with a solution yourself. And that really gives, I mean, it takes more time, but in return, you get a bit of a confidence boost, which I think is very helpful. So if you do all of that, then I think it will take more than 2.5 hours to just even go through the lectures and then the assignments. So yeah, I think something between 5 to 7 hours a week should do it, right? Okay, so Alan, you're asking, we need a basic knowledge of algos. So the course website has the materials on a per week basis. So for instance, in week 5, you're doing BFS, DFS. So if you go to the prerequisites for that week, you will find the material that is relevant for that week. So that's one way that you can navigate the prerequisites. Also, for every week, we also have a section called extras. So for those of you who already have the background and you have the time to explore more advanced aspects of a particular topic, you can go to the extras page to find extra resources. Okay. All right, so okay, I'm just trying to see if there are, there's 15 minutes left, so I'm just trying to see if I should prioritize any of these questions coming up. You are learning from NPTEL and YouTube. Will I be able to compete with global champions of CP and succeed who have years of experience? That's, again, kind of hard to tell. It really is proportional to how much time you invest. This course is not intended to be an advanced course in CP. So like global champions is probably, well, not probably, I should say certainly ambitious relative to where this course will stop. So this course is really designed for those who are starting out. And the hope is to get you to a point where you're comfortable solving, say, the first 3 or the first 4 problems in any typical problem set. And so, yeah, it's not champion level material. Sorry to disappoint you, but you will, I think, get to a pretty solid, early intermediate kind of level. But more importantly, I think what the course is designed to build is a sense of confidence and sense of just like, I know how to think and I know how to learn. So that combined with confidence means that you can now start leveling up on your own. I think previously we've also had questions about whether we are having a second part of this course where we do the more advanced topics. As of now, we don't really have a timeline on that. But, hopefully the course leaves you at a point where you're confident about picking things up on your own after this. Okay, I'm not able to continue CP for more than 2 to 3 hours a day. And then, okay. Right. So, yeah, I mean, CP that way can be a pretty frustrating experience, especially when you get bugs that, are mysterious, and it can be a huge time sink. But I think, 2 to 3 hours is a lot if you're spending that every day. And I think you can go pretty far with that. Increasing the efficiency and accuracy with each attempt really comes with, I think, some guided practice. If you kind of learn from the mistakes that you're making. So I think tactically, again, different things work for different people. But if you say keep a notebook where you kind of literally note down your mistakes. So for instance, I think chess players do this a lot, where they actually have a journal of all the matches they played and all the blunders they made and like the moves that were good, that were clever. I think if you have an account on chess.com, it generates these reports for you, right? So some people are very careful about keeping track of what happened. So it's not just about blindly practicing, but practicing in a deliberate fashion. So you practice, you actually make sure that you get the benefits of that practice by keeping track of what did you do right, what did you do wrong, things like that, right? And hopefully then over time, you will find your both your efficiency and your accuracy increasing. Difficulty level, yeah, I think Yash is suggesting an answer to a question from before, which is about the difficulty level of the course. Yeah, I think I would say, yeah, about the first 2-3 problems, or maybe up to the 4th problem, by the time you get to the end of it on something like code forces, yes. So there's a suggestion for where you can learn about STL. So thanks for that. I think Sudarshan's left the chat, but thank you for that. Okay, graphical representation, I think I addressed that. Okay, in programming questions, each question has a different approach. Generally forget the approach after some time. So this goes back to like making a habit of keeping track of what you did and what you learned. I think this is a pretty common problem that you learn something and then, you figure something out and then maybe something similar comes up later, but you don't quite remember that here was something that was useful back then. So I think some of this is, I'm definitely not suggesting doing anything by rote learning, but I think it helps to pay a little bit of attention and try to commit ideas and approaches to memory in a conscious sort of way. So that you have, and again, having a notebook or a cheat sheet or something helps, just keep track of all the things that you're learning. So definitely being a little bit organized about your notes and things like that, I think would be helpful. There's a lot of cheating going on during contests. I prefer if people here focus on learning and solving more instead of focusing directly on the ranking. That is a very good point, Yash. So I would also say that, the goal here is more on learning the mechanics of solving problems. This course is not advertised as, become a 5-star CodeChef, coder. That's not quite the goal. It may happen for some of you. It may happen organically. Maybe, it's again going to be, the other danger with that is that I think different people are at different stages of preparation. And so I'm also afraid of people getting needlessly disappointed if they don't reach a certain advertised level. I think you should all take your time and sort of go through your own sort of pathway. I think the important thing is learning about these concepts, and you might need a little more time to get to the point where you become very efficient at applying them in a time-bounded fashion. So that's when you're in a contest, it's not only important to solve the problem, but it's also important to be able to implement your code super fast. So that is something that only comes with training and practice. That's not necessarily covered in this course, because here you get assignments that you can solve over a period of a week or 10 days. So you can do it aram se. So for this course, the emphasis is not on speed, but eventually if you want to become, somebody was talking about competing with global champions, then you have to worry about all of these other aspects. So that's a slightly different ballgame, and it's not really the focus of this course, although hopefully the course will provide you with some foundations to get to a point where you can aim to sort of, take it to the next level. Will we be releasing week 11 and 12 videos for this run of the course? Yes, we will be. Harry, thanks for bringing that up. So I think the videos were kind of there, but I wasn't totally thrilled with how they sort of came out. So we just stuck to the basic videos for DP. But now I think I have like a nicer sort of coverage of the concepts that I wanted to talk about. So yes, these videos will be available. Hopefully sooner than later, but certainly in time for when you reach week 11 and 12, but very likely sooner. Yes. Yeah, I think there's a point here about focus on problem solving skills and remembering the approach, and this mindset may help. Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, I think I definitely don't recommend rote learning, but you don't have to be allergic to remembering things also. Sometimes it just helps to commit like main themes to memory, especially if you're struggling with recall. So it's not an entirely bad thing to sort of keep track of things, but yeah, you don't have to like literally memorize, but just, I think as you practice more and more, some things will become a part of, your overall sort of game plan, your overall skills, even without you having to explicitly remember anything. But until that happens, if you are finding yourself frustrated because, oh, I knew this, but I wasn't able to remember it, if that is happening often, then I would say, maybe make some notes and try to explicitly commit, obviously not code or anything like that, but commit the main ideas and concepts to memory, knowing that, okay, these are the sorts of things that could be helpful in these sorts of situations. How many assignments will be there every week? There will typically be one set of MCQ assignments, which is typically about 5 or 6 questions amounting to about 10 to 15 marks, I think, and it's probably normalized out of 10 every week. And then we also have 1 or 2 programming assignments. I think it would be good to practice a lot more than that. So we will recommend, I think, again, if you go to the extras page, you will see recommendations for problems that you can try out on standard CP platforms. And I would definitely encourage that you go out and try those problems. Yeah, I think somebody has been asking how do companies use CP, and there's a response somewhere here about coding rounds of companies. CP will help you in the coding rounds of companies. Yeah, so a lot of companies are, I think the interview process starts off with a coding round. So I think CP will kind of help you in that context. But do companies actually use CP in their actual enterprise software? I doubt it. I don't think so. In fact, if anything, you should be careful about not transferring all your CP skills into real world software engineering, because often in CP you're trying to optimize for certain things which you don't have to optimize for if you are a software engineer. Like in CV, you're often optimizing for what is a way in which I can implement this idea in the next 20 minutes. And that leads to, say, poor variable naming conventions. You obviously don't document your code and things like that. So that's not a good idea when you're working for a company. So I think when companies are actually doing the work that they do, they probably don't use CP style coding a whole lot. But but yeah, it's probably CP is probably still going to be relevant for some time to make like that entry level to crack the entry level entrance process. Okay, what is the format of the final exam? It's MCQs, yes. So Bhavesh, I solved the questions in C++ and can we get Java solutions? As I was showing you earlier, in the GitHub repository, there are Java solutions to most problems. I think they're not there for week 1, but they're there for the subsequent weeks, I'm pretty sure. So the Java solutions are there most of the time. Okay, so let me just go back and check if there's anything on YouTube. Okay, so Nikhil is asking if I'm replacing some of the previous tough lectures, or no, they're all previous lectures, except I think as Harry was asking, there will be some lectures that will get added to the end. But yeah, I don't think any of the existing lectures are going to be replaced. Is HackerRank ID enough for CP, or is Codeforces necessary? For this course, Codeforces is not necessary, but it's one of the most popular CP platforms out there. So if you feel like you need extra practice beyond HackerRank, I think Codeforces, CodeChef, and AtCoder are 3 really popular platforms, and you can sign up to all of them or some combination of them, whatever is comfortable. Ashutosh is asking, I'm yet to complete my graph data structures. Will I be able to follow for some weeks? Yeah, I think graphs don't come up until week 5. And even then, I think we try to keep it as self-contained as possible. So if you're going to finish graphs before week 5, I think it should be fine. What is the format of the assignments? They're mostly MCQs and programming assignments. What to do if you don't understand the editorial of any problem? Good question. So if, I think you just have to try and, I think it often helps to work with small examples. And then I think sometimes it helps to just set it aside for some time instead of just getting frustrated, and come back to it a bit later after you've had a chance to, just take a breath. And it also, I think, I think it also helps to talk to people. So if if you have a study group or you're friends with somebody who also has a shared interest in CP, then maybe discuss, and something may just, something where you were stuck conceptually, I think it may just, ease up after a discussion. So, okay, I will try to see if I can add the TLE bot in Discord. Thanks for the suggestion, Niharika. I don't see any new questions here on Zoom. I hope I didn't miss anything from before. And we're just about on the hour. Okay, so let me just, I meant to do this at the start of the session. And, I think I wanted to introduce you to the TAs. Let me just see if I can see that Gaurav is here. I don't know if you are, if you're around, Gaurav, but feel free to unmute and say hi.
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is Gaurav Viramgami. I'm a third-year undergraduate student at IIT Gandhinagar in computer science. And yeah, I will be the TA for this course throughout the duration. So feel free to reach out to me on Discord if you have any queries throughout the this NPTEL course. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Gaurav. And it's of course great to have you on board. And I think all the TAs just go by their complete names on Discord, so you can find them easily. And if you're not sure, you can just add team, and I think that'll ping everybody, I guess. So Yash is here. Yash, do you want to say hi if you're around?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Yash. I will be your TA for the next 12 weeks for this course. I am a third year undergraduate in electrical engineer at IIT Gandhinagar. Yeah. So you can feel free to ping me on Discord if you got any doubts. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Yash and Gaurav. I think we also have a couple of other TAs. We have Manas and Nipun, both of whom are, I'm not sure, but I don't see them here unless they're using cute nicknames that I don't know. But I think it's unlikely. So Manas and Nipun also go by their full names on Discord. Nipun Mahajan, I think, and Manas Mulpuri. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah. So you can find you can catch hold of any of them, hopefully, and as long as it's not Java, I think they'll be able to help you out. But no, I think I'm kind of half joking. Please feel free to reach out for help, and even if it's code in a different language from C++, I mean, I think C++ and Python and C would be the easiest for us to provide support with or help with in terms of debugging, etc. But if you're writing programs in Java or a different language, please post them. Post your questions on Discord anyway. I think one of us, or often it also happens that others who are taking up the course have been very helpful in the past. So chances are that you will find help. So post your questions on Discord. That is the recommended way to do it because everybody sees it. If you post, if you DM one of us, if you send us an individual message, we may end up missing it, whereas you have much better chances of getting a response if you just post it out there on Discord. And remember to tag our team, and I will remember to check out the TLE bot and see if I can get that installed. Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. All right, are there any other last minute questions? I'm happy to stay back for a couple of minutes if that helps. Don't see anything more on YouTube anyway, and I think the Zoom chat also seems to have no new questions. All right, so then I think we are good to wrap up here. We will be having these sessions every week. So we will use that time to discuss the concepts that we are learning that week. And typically what happens is the solutions get discussed 1 week after. So for instance, the first week's assignments will be available to you from Monday, and the deadline will be the middle of next week, I believe. So when we meet next Saturday, we won't be able to discuss the assignments, but we will be able to discuss the materials. And when we meet on the second Saturday, we will discuss the week 1 assignments and week 2 materials. And that's how it'll go. So in the live session for week I, we will discuss assignments from week I-1 and the materials from week number I. I ranging from 1 to 12. I'm not like, we typically have one meeting just after, like in the 13th week, just ahead of the exams, if you have any last minute doubts that you'd like to clarify. Ujala, I think you're asking, can you brief complete course? Not sure if you want me to briefly talk about the complete course, but you can find all the information about the course materials on the course website, either through the SWAYAM portal or through the website that's on my website. So there are links to that all over Discord, and also if you log in through SWAYAM. So I hope that will hopefully address your question. But if you have any specific question, like is this topic covered or not, if you cannot figure that out quickly from looking at the course website, feel free to ask on Discord if you have a specific question, and we will try to answer that. Yeah. Okay, all right. So on that note, I just want to thank everybody for joining on a Saturday evening. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to start off this course with all of you. Thanks to the TAs, especially to Gaurav and Yash for being here, and to the others as well for joining in. And I will see you back next week. Thanks very much, everybody. We will conclude this session here for now. And keep in touch on Discord, and see you back next week. So good night from the team, and see you around.